They say nature brings peace, but sometimes even nature hides secrets. Tonight's story isn't about ghosts from an old mansion or shadows in a cemetery. This one begins with rain, trees, and a lake that doesn't exist on any map. So before we begin, make sure you're alone. The lights are dim and the rain outside is real, because this story will stay with you long after it ends. Now, if you are new to our channel and interested in these stories, be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss another upload. On to our today's story.
I have always considered myself a child of nature. I was raised in a most singular place where the natural world presented itself in all its splendor. Our home was nestled amidst dense forests of deodar and pine, where the graceful strut of peacocks, the sly trots of foxes, and the spontaneous chorus of birdsong were the backdrop of my daily life. The residents of our small society were all devotees of the outdoors. One might be capturing photographs of birds, another compiling a collection of wildflowers, while others simply preferred to lose themselves in the enchanting silence. But the most mysterious part of our little paradise was undoubtedly the artificial lake, situated directly opposite our society. It was no ordinary lake. The high fence that encircled it had always provoked questions in our young minds. It was a formidable barrier, too tall for anyone to scale, and adorned with signs that starkly warned of dangerous waters. The most peculiar thing was that this lake was a non-entity. It appeared on no official document or map. It had no presence on Google Earth, nor was it mentioned in any government record. The locals referred to it as the Lost Lake. The elders would tell us it once belonged to a landowner, yet no legal paperwork ever attested to its existence. As children, we would often lean against that fence and speculate. We imagined it was a secret military installation or perhaps the site of some long-forgotten tragic event. Despite the barrier, the lake's water was crystal clear, with lotus flowers blooming serenely on its surface, yet not a soul ever dared to swim in it. The local folklore was rich with strange tales about the lake. Some claimed to see odd lights flickering over its surface at night, while others swore that on moonlit nights the water would begin to stir of its own accord. These stories wove a shroud of mystery around the lake, one that remains intact to this day. The monsoon season was never merely a weather pattern for me. It was a state of being. When the first scent of the first rain arrived, carried on the shoulders of the wind, the entire atmosphere would fill with a strange, intoxicating freshness. It was an aroma that rose from the very particles of the soil, distilled through flower petals, and filtered through the bark of trees before reaching my room. I would sit by my open window, waiting for the rain to come. First, the distant rumble of clouds would be heard, then a dampness would set in the air. Suddenly, the first drop would fall on a leaf, then a second, a third, and then a symphony would begin, one that required not ears, but a heart to truly hear. Every surface had its own unique music. The sharp, percussive sound on the solid roof, the soft, juicy rustle on the leaves, the gentle chin-chin on the concrete, the mesmerizing chum-chum on the lake's water. The birds would retreat to their nests, yet their chirping would merge with the rain's melody, taking on a new form. The koel's melodious call, lost within the downpour, became all the more enchanting. At night, the scene became even more mysterious. I would sleep with my window open, allowing the lullaby of the rain to seep into my dreams. Sometimes the dramatic sound of a heavy shower would wake me, and I would lie with open eyes watching the raindrops glint in the darkness. The morning after a rainfall presented a different spectacle entirely. Every leaf was gleaming, every flower refreshed, and the air held an extraordinary clarity. The birds, with their songs, seemed to be offering their gratitude for nature's benediction. These rains were wondrous, sometimes gentle and drizzling, at other times fierce and stormy. But in every form, they struck a chord within my heart, drawing me closer to nature, to a place where I felt myself to be a part of the cosmos itself. It must have been around 10 in the evening. The rain had enveloped the earth in its full majesty and terror. Cracks of lightning tore through the sky as if heaven itself was splitting apart. The air carried that electric charge unique to the moments before a storm. I was lying in my room by the window, feeling every drop of rain resonate within my very being. At first, I thought it was a new note in the rain's composition, a faint rustling getting lost somewhere in within the storm's roar. I closed my eyes, trying to isolate it. This sound was different from the rain's music, more human, more emotional. When I focused, I realized the sound had crystallized into the distinct rhythm of weeping. This was no theatrical sob from a film. This was the crying of a deeply wounded soul, carrying within it a whole narrative of inexpressible sorrow and agony. I switched on my bedside lamp and peered out the window. The rain was so intense that I was drenched to the bone in mere moments. My eyes stung from the downpour. And then I saw her. She was standing directly below my window, tall, with wet hair plastered to her face. She wore a white garment. Her eyes, oh God, her eyes! They were not tired from crying, nor did they convey the look of someone helpless. Rather, they held a mysterious gleam. My heart went out to her. I spoke softly, "Sister, please come inside. You can sit here until the rain stops." The moment my words ended, a savage light flashed in her eyes. She clawed at my hand as if she were not a human, but a wild animal. Her nails dug deep into my flesh, and drops of my blood mingled with the rainwater. The way she ran, it was no human sprint. She was a blur, a phantom-like existence that vanished into the sheets of rain. Her speed was so immense, the human eye could scarcely follow it. Back inside, when I woke my father, he did not believe me at first. But when I showed him my hand, where the marks of her nails were still wet with blood, a wave of fear washed over his face. By morning, everything was as it should be. The rain had ceased, birds were chirping, and the sun's rays were turning the water droplets on the leaves into strings of pearls. I was lost in questions all day. Who was that woman? How did she come to be outside my house? Why did she respond to my offer of help with such violence? And most of all, how could she run so impossibly fast? Several weeks passed, but the terror of that night clung to me. Then, one morning, as I set out for my routine jog, fate once again placed me by the shores of that mysterious lake. The sun's first rays were dancing on the water's surface like gold. I saw her from a distance, the same white garment, the same long hair. She was sitting on a rock at the lake's edge, her feet submerged in the water. Her white clothes swayed in the gentle morning breeze. Yet the most bizarre detail was that her clothes were perfectly dry, while her feet were underwater. I stopped about 50 feet away. Suddenly, without any warning, she turned her neck at an unnatural angle, like a bird might do. Her eyes met mine. And then she smiled. It was no ordinary smile. The corners of her lips twisted, but her eyes were completely lifeless, two dark pits that seemed to bore into my very soul. That smile held an eeriness that sent ice through my veins. In an instant, she stood up. Her movement was so swift the human could hardly register it. She moved straight towards the high fence, that fence which was at least 12 feet tall, topped with a web of barbed wire. I watched, my breath caught in my throat. She approached the fence, and then the sight terrified me so profoundly that I shouted, "Whatever you are, don't try to frighten me. I'll call the police." She seemed to startle, as if frightened by my threat, and she turned and ran back towards the lake. She sprinted to the edge and jumped in. By then, I had already placed the call. The police arrived, and I gave them my full statement. At first, they were dismissive, attempting to disprove my story. Nevertheless, to placate me, they inspected the entire perimeter of the fence. They found no possible point of entry. There was no breach, no damage. One could not possibly get inside without causing significant damage to the fence, and there was no evidence of any such thing. I was at first in a state of profound shock. From her speed alone, I had gathered that she was no ordinary human being. She was something else. I could never comprehend what it was. For my own peace of mind, I searched the lake's perimeter with my sister and brothers. It took us nearly an hour and a half to cover the entire area. Nowhere did we find even the slightest break in the fence. Everyone finally concluded that she must have been an entity, a creature from another realm. Now I find myself at a loss for what to do next. I have tried many times to forget the incident, and to a large extent I have succeeded. Nothing of that magnitude has happened to me since. But often, during the rains, I get the distinct sensation of footsteps pacing beneath that very window, a sound to which I have now grown almost accustomed.